Thank you, Sarah. You know, it takes guts to step up and say, I'll be the leader of the pledge drive this year. So I want to just truly acknowledge Sarah for doing that. Thank you. So today is just kind of an ordinary day, right? You know, just like any other day, right? That's why you're all here. So there's stuff happening. Have you noticed there's stuff happening here? Okay. So we got the pledge drive going on. We got the congregational meeting after, a little bit after the service, and then I heard a rumor that somebody's triggering off the abandonment issues of some people in the place, and so we have to deal with that. I'm leaving, and so I've announced this week, for those of you who don't know, that I will be moving on to be the senior minister at the Center for Spiritual Living in Olympia, Washington, effective the end of April. And so I've been appreciating the huge outpouring of love I've gotten from people here, and it fills my heart. And what I know is I'm not leaving this community. I'm expanding this community out into the next place that I go. So I take you with me in my heart, and hopefully you take me with you in your hearts as you expand into the next whatever is forming and the next expression. But I wanted to talk about that because it's the elephant in the room, right? Yep. Anybody else have a thought about that? Or we're good, but we don't need to talk about it. So I want to talk about it a little bit together. And change happens. Change is the only constant in the universe. Have you noticed? Okay. We have our motto as religious scientists is change your thinking, change your life. And yet what I've noticed is many of us, when we actually encounter change, get all kind of squirrely about it, right? I do sometimes. How about you? Do you get squirrely sometimes about change? Yes. Okay. This is going to be a little more participatory. I'm told I'm not supposed to ask questions to people, but we're going to play today, okay? I'm going to have some fun. So change is always happening. And the question isn't, is change happening? The question is, how do I handle change? How do I interact with change? How do I experience change? And how do I approach it? Okay? Because change is simply the outpicturing of the universe making room for more. The experience of the universe growing. Okay? And sometimes we don't perceive it. When we're on, we've all been through life experiences where we're on this side of the experience and we're walking into it. It seems really challenging, dark, scary, whatever. And when we've gone through it and we look back on it, we go, oh, that wasn't so bad, and look, I'm in a better place now than I was. Okay? So what I know about this process, because I trust Spirit, is that this is a win-win-win for everybody. This is a win for me because I'm going back to kind of an area that I love in the country and to a church that I think resonates a little more with me and my particular style and what I like to do. And it's a smaller church, so I get to kind of relax a little bit. They took a look at my job description here and they said, oh, you're going to have a cake walk here. And I said, thank you, I need some cake. Chocolate cake, yes. And it's going to be a win for that community because they've been looking for a minister for the last year and a half and stuff like that. I just realized today I'm following another Bob, who was a previous minister who didn't work out too well for them. So there's a message there somewhere, but I'll process that later. And it's a win for you. It's a win for this community because something new wants to evolve that's even better than what was already here. Because that's the nature of Spirit. Spirit doesn't go backwards. Ernest Holmes says evolution is always forward, okay? And so this community is evolving into its next forward. Are we good with that? We got that? Okay. So the thing is that we get to play with change however we do it. And there's several ways to deal with change. One is to go kicking and screaming through change, okay? I've done a little bit of that. Probably, you don't have to put your hands up, but one or two of you might have experienced that. I have a friend who wrote a song called Kicking and Screaming Down the Path of Transformation. Okay? And we do that sometimes. We leave the claw marks in the ground as we go through it. Okay? That's one way. Another way is to shut down. To avoid the whole thing, I'm just going to go away and let them work it out, and I'll come back when they figure out what they're doing. Okay? That's another way of doing it. Not a healthy way. Okay? Because you're not participating. It's a head in the sand consciousness. And then finally, the way that I recommend, the way that's the most productive, is to be open and curious and engaged. Open, curious, and engaged. And I'm going to invite us as a community to be open, curious, and engaged, because it's going to take all of us in that consciousness to create that. See, it's not the minister's responsibility. It's not the board's responsibility. It's our collective responsibility, because there isn't the ministers over here and the board is over here and we're over here. We are a community, all of us. And I include myself in this because I'm here for the next 6 weeks, and I intend to be involved in helping and supporting this community, creating the greatest yet to be. Okay? So I want you to know that. That's my consciousness. So that's the opportunity that we have, is to be conscious to the change, to create the change that we want, and we have to have a vision in order to do that. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So we have to understand that change is just the universe unfolding. For some people, the change experience is sort of like walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Right? Okay? Maybe not you, but you know somebody, right? Okay, so we'll just talk about them. And there's 2 practices that you want to do when you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Number 1, keep walking. Don't set up camp. Don't set up a 4-star hotel resort and plant yourself that, I'm in the valley of the shadow of death. I've been here for ages and I'm going to be here for ages. Don't do that. Okay? The second one is, have a vision for where you're going. Have an outcome that you would like to experience as a result of that, even if you don't know how to get there. Because the challenge that we do as we walk this walk is, am I willing to be in that really uncomfortable place of, I've just left the known and I haven't yet arrived at the unknown. I've let go of one trapeze and I trust the universe to know that there's another trapeze coming, but I'm out here in midair right now. Okay? Maya Angelou wrote a book called In the Meantime. How do we handle mean times? And the truth is, our culture doesn't handle mean times well. We're not trained to do that. We don't have a lot of enthusiasm and experience doing that. Okay? I hear crickets. And so, this is an opportunity to get better at handling that in-between space and not looking for a quick solution. I've already had a couple of people, who's the next minister? Who's the next minister? It's like, I don't know. We just, this just happened. Last week, last Sunday I got the word in the evening that, that they were offering me the position. And so the board has talked a little bit, and there's process starting to happen, and there's stuff being considered, but we don't have a solution yet. And it's okay to not rush into a solution, but to sit and allow spirit time to move. See, this whole process for me has been a spiritual journey. Okay? And the way that my process went was about a year ago, I started asking the question, is this still my place to be? Because, I think it's no secret to say that, there were some challenges happening and a little turmoil happening, going on, right? And that's not a blame statement. There's nobody at fault here. I want to say, do not get into blame, shame, and guilt, because it's a waste of time. Okay, nobody has pushed me out of this church. I don't have to leave. I'm welcome to stay if I want to. But I at least started to ask myself the question. Reverend Kathy Ann, my minister when I was in Seattle, said every 6 months she asks herself the question, do I still want to be a religious scientist? And so it's good to ask questions like that. It's good to say, is this still my place? Do I still belong here? And so I started with that question a year ago. And a couple of opportunities came up, both of them in the Seattle area, interestingly enough. And I looked at both of them. One of them actually was Olympia, it was open earlier. And I said, no, this here is my place right now. Back in October when Olympia came open, the ministers, Reverend Mary and Reverend Sue and I, were just starting to coalesce, to come together in a way, in a connection that we had not done before. And it was a rich, beautiful process. Okay, and so I knew that we had to walk all the way through that process. Okay, and so I did, because it was beneficial for the center to start to look at that, because out of that comes a higher consciousness of what is ministry in this center, what does it take, what does it involve, and we need to know that before we move forward anywhere else. Okay, and so we went through that process together. We went through that, and then finally back in January, Olympia came open again. And somebody pointed out to me, a friend of mine pointed it out to me and kind of just called me up and said, you might want to consider Olympia. It's kind of like the way I got here, okay? I was looking at another church when I, was thinking, several years ago, and Reverend Andrea, who used to be the minister here, had lunch with me one day, and she said, you might want to think about Reading. And out of that, I contacted Reverend Mary, and out of that 3 years ago this weekend, you guys decided to elect me to be your minister here. I joked with somebody earlier, I had a 98% approval rating back then. I think it's dropped a little bit like most leaders have. But I don't think it's as bad as certain leaders have ever gotten. So we'll just leave it there. I'm not naming names. But I finally could decide to take it and consider it and sit with it. And Spirit said, go look. At least go look. I didn't want to get to the end of my life and say, God, I wish I would have done that. You ever have experiences in life where you sit there and go, I don't want to be sitting in my deathbed going back and going, I wish I would have done that. Okay, so I had to go look. And when I looked, it resonated. I resonated with them. They resonated with me. Those of you who know me well know that I love Seattle, Puget Sound area. This is Olympia, Washington. It's the bottom end of Puget Sound. Lots of seafood, lots of water, no 115-degree summers. Good food, a lot of rain. I've been happy for the last few weeks. It's been like, my web feet were drying out and cracked, and they're starting to come back a little bit, and I'm going to arrive there in May, which is when they start to go into their summer season, which is glorious in the Northwest. And then there'll be the long gray after that, but that's when I'll come back and visit you guys sometime next January, February, when I'll say, what is that? I remember something called sun, vaguely. Okay. So that's the process that I went through, and out of that came the it felt right. And what I want you to know is this is a spiritual process for this community to go through and to sit with what feels right. What is the next evolutionary step of this community? And to sit with that question. Not for just some people out there over there, the board or the leadership team or the whatever, but for all of us, because we are going to collectively create this, just as we collectively created the last experience. What I want to say is if you're brand new here or you've just come here, your soul has called you to be here at this time. This is a soul journey for all of us. It's a soul journey for all of us. And our soul is always wanting to expand our experience of good. Our soul is always wanting to expand that. So I invite you to participate in this journey. To feel vulnerable, to feel sometimes lost and unsure, but to feel that and to walk through it. Because what you do here is also how you do everything else in life. Okay? And so do we do it tapped into source? Do we do it walking in faith, as Sarah so beautifully put it? Or do we do it with fear and worry and concern? So I invite you, and there's plenty of wonderful consciousness support with the ministers and the practitioners, and the board will support us consciously in moving through this. So I invite you to walk through it with the vision. And the vision that I want to invite us to have is a very beautiful, thriving, flourishing, nurturing, nourishing community. Would you be okay with that? Yes. Okay. And it already exists, right? Okay. And so what I want you to do is expand that vision. How much better can it get than it already is? Okay. Believe it or not, there's a better minister than me out there. I hate to admit that. It's so humbling. Okay? No. Okay? But there's a better experience to be had. And as long as you're holding it in your consciousness, you're going to have that. So I want to invite you to do that. Are we good with that? Okay. I want to shift gears then, but kind of, because it's all the same thing. I want to talk about our intentional giving campaign. Okay? Because it's being conscious with the giving, and the giving is what supports the vision and the creation of that community, of this center. Okay? And so, a couple of weeks ago I referenced that there are two things that traditionally a minister is never supposed to talk about from the pulpit. There's actually three. I'm going to throw politics in there also. But we'll put that aside for the moment. Okay? Two things that a minister is never supposed to talk about from a pulpit. They are money and sex, right? Money and sex. Now, I love it because this teaching, Ernest Holmes says, this teaching is about human needs and aspirations. And what are the two of the most charged human needs and aspirations? Money and sex, right? And maybe right now, politics. Okay? So let's not talk about any of that. Okay? So I'm going to step into it and talk about it. All right? So I told the first service, maybe on my last Sunday on April the 30th, I'll do the sex talk. Because then I can leave town, right afterwards. But actually, I remember, a minister friend of mine who used to say that most people are more willing to tell me their sex life and talk about their sex life than they are willing to talk about their money. So this could be the more dangerous talk to talk about. Okay, so take a breath. We're going to talk about money. Strap in. A friend of mine, teacher of mine, mentor of mine, tells the story of years ago. She went to see a very famous, very powerful religious science minister named Raymond Charles Barker. Raymond Charles Barker wrote the book, The Power of Decision. Okay? Reverend Mary is teaching a class on that right now. Beautiful, powerful book. He was one of the founders of the International, Religious Science International, out of which this church was in that tradition for a long time. And so in a room full of 3,000 people, he walks out, he's about 80 years old, big shock of white hair, dressed to the nines. And he reaches into his wallet and he pulls out a wad of $100 bills. Just like these, excepting these are 20s. I need a raise. And he says, this is money. I love money. And the person who tells this story says, I was appalled. She said, I thought this man is losing it and he's not even spiritual. Okay? And so he went on to say, he paused for a moment, he went on to say, now, if you had any kind of a reaction to that, if perhaps you thought I wasn't spiritual, and my friend says, oh my God, he's looking right in my head. Okay? He says, I want you to consider this. If I had walked out on the stage and brought my 4-year-old grandson out and said, this is my grandson. I love my grandson. Would you have had the same experience that you just had with money? And of course, a lot of people said, no, guilty, And he says, why, if you reject money, if you can't love money, how would you expect it to come to where it's not loved? Money will not flow to where it's not loved. We just had that beautiful song from Dick Sorensen, love goes where it's loved. How many of you will hang around a place where you're not loved? Put my hand down too. Okay? Yeah, we don't do that, right? And how many of you tend to go like a moth to a flame to where if you're loved and appreciated, you go there, right? Okay, and some of you just are neutral about all this. Okay, let's try that again. This is participatory. This is, yes, I will go where I'm loved. Okay. All right. Money will do the same thing in our lives. Do I hold a consciousness that allows it to come in? Do I hold a consciousness where I love it? Not in an unhealthy manner, not a putting it before God manner, but in I just hold it as an expression of God. Our theme this year with the intentional giving campaign is the flow of love, because I view money as an expression of the love of God. It's a divine idea in the mind of God. How do I know that? Because everything that exists is a divine idea in the mind of God. God is all there is. God is love. Therefore, money is love. That chair you're sitting in is love. The clothing you're wearing is love. The walls, the ceilings of this building are love. And so if we exclude that, I remember working with a prosperity teacher who said, most people can get that God is anywhere, in the curtains and the windows and the walls, excepting 2 places. Number one is money, and the other one is themselves. Okay? And so hopefully you have more of a consciousness of you are God in form. You are love. Turn to your neighbor and say, you are love in form. You are love in form. Okay? And that's the truth of who you are. That's the truth of who I am. That's the truth of who we all are. It's also the truth of everything else in this world. And so do we allow ourselves to have just simply an open, loving, relaxed attitude about money? That we can share it, we can give it, we can receive it. I was talking with somebody who just had an offer of money given to him just yesterday. And he said it was really hard for me to receive it. Somebody wanted to give him money for a service that he had rendered, and it was really hard to receive it. He took it. But do we do that? Or do we push it away? Yesterday I was in a bank. I was writing a check to get that money, and the teller loved my purple pen. I have this purple pen. I've been infected with Lori's love of purple. Actually, I think it kind of resonated with what was already there. And Mary and I actually use the same style of pens these days. And so, she loved my purple pen, and she was commenting on it. And I noticed that her mouse was purple. And I said, so is that a bank issue mouse? She goes, no, it's my personal mouse. So we got to talking, and I finally, as I left, I just handed her my purple pen. I gave it to her. And she said, thank you so much. You've just made my day. Okay? For a $1.50 pen, I've made somebody's day. I've brightened their day. As you've noticed, I have another one. I have several in my office. Okay? And so it's easy to give away. Can we just give away like that? Can we brighten somebody's day? I used to be really tight when I figured out the tip on a bill. And I realized that, for 50 cents to maybe $1 more, I can brighten somebody else's day a lot more, because there's a difference between 15% and 20% as far as what the consciousness of the person giving it is and how the person receives it. And if you give 20%, you're perceived as generous, and the person feels good about themselves. And if we give 15, it's kind of just the minimum. Okay? And for my bill, I don't go out to really exotic restaurants around here. Yeah, I was going to say, that's a joke. Yes, there aren't a whole lot of really expensive restaurants, okay? But for 50 cents to $1, I can make somebody else's day, and I can walk away feeling generous. 50 cents to $1. Okay? Can we give a little bit more? Can we, as Eric Butterworth's reading says, as we touch life, can we have it with a giving consciousness in whatever we're doing, whatever our interactions are? And so I invite you, as you consider this pledge drive, to touch it with a giving consciousness. This is not about obligation. God is not going to like you any better whether you give or not, okay? The board probably won't like you any better. I can't speak for Deb completely. You'll make Deb's life easier as she tries to balance the budget. She's our treasurer. Okay? But they will still love you whether you do or not. I will still love you. Mary and Sue will still love you whether you do or not. But the thing is, how do you feel about you? How do you feel about you? Okay? And so I invite you to feel good. I invite you to practice that feeling of generosity, to realize that we cannot outgive God. That we are giving into an infinite source from an infinite source. Okay? And it has to come back to us. It constantly comes back to us. And so to just give with that consciousness. I've been told that I should say how much it costs per seat in the place and all that kind of dollar stuff. I don't care. If you need to know, it's about $26 per person per chair per Sunday. If you're putting in $26 every week, you're paying your way for just kind of our basic right now, okay? So in case you want to know that, there it is. What I want to really talk about is the consciousness and the energy and the love, is that you give with heart. So I invite you to play with that this week, to just look at that, not just in the pledge drive, but in your life in general. Do I give with heart? Am I playing with giving? Am I in there, and am I open to receiving? If somebody gives me a compliment, can I say thank you? Or do I say, I don't deserve this old thing, I didn't, whatever. Okay, do we push it off? So playing in that game of giving and receiving. And that's your spiritual practice this week. That's our collective spiritual practice. Play with the game of giving and receiving. And see if we can expand it a little bit more than what we already have. Because as we expand our giving, we expand our receiving. As we expand our receiving, we expand our giving. Are you willing to play with that this week? Great. Yes. And then are you willing to be engaged in the process of change? In a conscious way. Beautiful. Might as well, you might as well, because you are already. But again, you can go kicking and screaming, or you can go, let's have some fun and play with this, okay? So there's a beautiful future. It starts today. It moves forward. You get to play with it. You get to co-create it as a group together. And so it is. I'm going to close with a quote from Eric Butterworth from Spiritual Economics. Remembering my reading glasses. No miracles are required. It is the way you have been created You are a rich and creative spiritual being. Say that with me. I am a rich and creative spiritual being. Breathe that in. You can never be less than this. You may frustrate your potential. You may identify with that which is less than what you can be. But within you now and always is the unborn possibility of a limitless experience of inner stability and outer treasure, and yours is the privilege of giving birth to it. And you will if you can believe. So I invite you this week to give birth to a greater possibility of treasure, of greater good than you've ever experienced before, greater good than you can imagine before, and to play in that. Let's move into prayer. And so I know that there is only one life, one source, one infinite presence, always on, always on. And we are one of it. This infinite universe is taking the time and the energy to express itself as me, as you, as each and every one of us. We are here because the universe wants us here. And we are fully resourced in all that we are here to do, to live and to fully express and experience the divine love, the divine abundance, the divine good, the divine wholeness, the joy, the playfulness, and the creativity of spirit. That is ours to do right here, right now. And so I speak my word that we say yes to this. We open to this possibility. We open to this source more fully than ever before. We stop identifying with lack and limitation wherever we do in our lives, and we open up and identify with givingness, receivingness, with abundance of good in every single way, in every single aspect of our lives. We take in a deep breath and we allow ourselves to expand who we are and who we remember that we are, because we already are this. And we already are good. And so in gratitude for knowing this truth, and in gratitude for all the good that manifests out of this truth, I simply release this word into law, knowing that it's put into form and manifest, and the law knows how to do that. We don't have to figure out the how. We just hold the vision of the what. And the universe fills in. And for this I'm grateful. And it is so. We affirm that together by saying, and so it is. Thank you and bless you.